welcome back. Welcome back to Just One Question. We're now into 2022, and I have to say, 2022 doesn't look a lot different from 2021. Not that I'm complaining. Why am I not complaining? Because I have as my guest the inimitable Mitch Joel. And Mitch, if you don't know him, helps leaders decode the future. He's the founder of 6 Pixels Group. Do you still own up to that?
Yeah, for now.
Of course, you've evolved beyond that, and a couple of other things since then. You are. But for me, when I first got to know of you and you, it was the 6 pixels of separation that caught my eye. Early on, you were prognosticating the future and telling us what was going to happen. And so, first of all, just tell us, how are you doing? Give us 20 seconds on how Mitch Joel is doing.
I can't believe we're still doing this. I know you started this because of the pandemic, and it's like you've come back to me. It's like Monopoly. We're pass and go again. I'm doing. We talked a little bit before. I'm feeling more and more bitter about how things are unfolding in the world, which I shouldn't, because I'm a more positive and optimistic person.
Right.
But in general, I'm very thankful. I'm very, very privileged. It's hard not to wear and see my privilege on its sleeve. And so I'm thankful that I have the resources and capabilities to manage through these times, unlike a lot of people and businesses that just are kind of throwing their arms up in the air and this is the final tap. And I feel for those people. I really do.
Yeah. How do you plan? How do you run a business? How do you look forward and do the things that you would normally be doing early in the year? It just seems crazy even to try now. So yes, a moment of thoughtfulness, well reminded, well spoken, Mr. Joel, for everybody who is struggling with this pandemic.
I want to correct one thing, because you were saying, "Oh, you knew about me through 6 Pixels Separate." I'll tell you exactly how we met. I was 15 plus years ago asked to speak on a very, very large stage, and I accepted the challenge and opportunity to do so. And I immediately thought I need to get serious about this. And I stumbled into your books and your writing. And back then, as now I do, I wrote you a very fanboy driven letter about how much your work impacted me and how much it meant to me. And then when you started creating content, I was like bunny ears up, super pumped that you were doing this. So you can say that it's because of my podcast, but it's really me fanboying on your work and the work you've done for many years. So thank you, Nick.
You are welcome, and I'm just glad that we've had this chance to reconnect and mutually appreciate each other, because it's the human connection we've been struggling with during this pandemic, and still are and will be for a while. So thanks all for all that. And let's get to the just one question, because you're an important guy and you've got lots to say, and I want to hear it all. And I want to give you lots of time for it. So given the pandemic and given all the obstacles we're facing, yet I know you are still looking forward, because that's what you do. So what are you excited about? What is your future prognostication lens telling you about 2022 and beyond?
I have this new keynote, and I call it the Great Compression. And I'll give you the top level of it, because I feel like in the haze of a pandemic, we often amplify things that shouldn't be amplified. So one of the things we heard is, wow, look at all this digitization, look at all this innovation. And we say it as if it wasn't really rapidly happening before the pandemic. It absolutely was. And so when I talk about this moment, this great compression, it's 2 things that I think are still really important to this conversation, this question. One is, what I look forward to is this amplification that we had. And the amplification really is that all ears have opened up. Small, medium, large businesses, solopreneurs, massive organizations, B2B, B2C, highly regulated or otherwise, have really woken up to the fact that either they had digital really nailed down, or they really weren't doing it at the scale of which they should have. And so that is a monumentous thing, where we have this acknowledgement, not this, oh, our industry doesn't do that. Our industry is more traditional. Our business isn't like that. We're just a local corner store. We saw the digitization amplify to the entire business community.
Mhm.
And the second one is the distribution, which is the more important one, which is we have everybody now in. So we have our youngest of young, you're talking about how busy I am. I'm very busy with kids outside of this door who are doing online learning,
Mhm.
right? So now we have our youngest, our K1s and up, who are really digitized. And on the other side, we really brought in the other spectrum, which was our eldest of elderly, where at one point we were sliding, iPads under their door so we could FaceTime with the grandkids, or getting them into online ordering so they could get their food. But that led to that ecosystem being fully mature now. Now,
Mhm.
again, of course, we have a great digital divide, and we have countries that aren't connected, or countries that don't have great Wi-Fi, or states even in provinces where I live in Canada. But overall, this idea that we have this amplification and distribution model that's been somewhat completed, to me, is really what makes things interesting. So when you're thinking about either how you're planning for this moment in time in 2022 or moving forward, those would be the angles that I would want to look at, not how quick innovation is or how much technology we have. That's always been there. It's not a good story. It's not a new story. But think about it in terms of this amplification and distribution. And I think within that, you see real opportunities. So to me, I'm really excited about that, because it means a new type of customer. It means a new type of consumer behavior. For people like you and I, it's a new way to do things, to present, to be present. So I had a call just recently for a speaking event. And of course, they're waffling between, do we hold it in person? Do we go virtual? How are we going to do this? And to create an experience, they want to rent a theater, bring in the speakers, do a 3-camera shoot. And I think there's ways to do that. But my general sentiment was, I think this is more powerful. I think if somebody has a decent setup and you can frame them well with a good camera, and they can add in visual elements, which we both can, there's something more intimate about this, right? I could have pre-recorded this. You could have sent me the question. This is still live and in the moment. I think that's another important aspect that we may have lost in this zooming out or great resignation. That live and in the moment isn't just when we're together in our protein forms, but it can be through channels like this. And again, it's how you frame it, both technically and with the camera, but also in terms of the conversation.
Oh, I love that. And I knew you'd say something that would trigger a further question in me, Mitch. So it's just one question plus
Oh,
one.
no.
No apologies. Yeah. I was talking to a group of doctors the other day, the late fall, and they were whining and complaining as American doctors in our ridiculous healthcare system are wont to do. And they were talking about how difficult it was to do telemedicine. And the challenges of getting insurance to, which are real, to get insurance to repay and that kind of thing. It's a change, and that whole industry deals with change reluctantly and slowly. But the fascinating thing was, I said to them, you're thinking about this in entirely the wrong way. It's actually a huge opportunity. You have now the moment that, and this fits in exactly with your amplification and distribution. You can seize the moment now to establish what telemedicine should look like for the future, and greatly increase your reach and your efficiency, and reach to underserved people who currently can't easily get to doctors' offices and hospitals and so on. So this is a moment that once we stop seeing it as a restriction, and naturally we're experiencing it as a restriction because of all the issues of travel and the abilities to get together and that kind of thing. But once that passes and it's no longer it feels like a restriction, then finally we'll see it as an opportunity. Our palette, our communications palette, from my perspective and from your perspective, our innovation palette has been greatly expanded thanks to those two themes that you identify. And so for me, it opens up a whole world some point in the future when things will get much more flexible, much richer, and much broader. So I'm just wondering, from your perspective, from that amplification and distribution angle, what do you see as what questions, let's say, should an industry be asking itself in order to take full advantage of that?
Well, look, I mean, it's not me who said this. Usually when there are a lot of restrictions, that's when you get creative. And what comes out of the creativity is this function of innovation. So I called it forced innovation. So what did forced innovation teach you as a business? that maybe it's not about having 50 people in our restaurant. It's about free delivery, free pickup. It's about maybe online learning that we can have our chef now come on and speak to people and talk about the food and the ingredients or how to make it.
Mm-hmm.
These are all new business lines that can be added once there is a normal or whatever that is and that looks like. My fear is that in the forced innovation, you had a new customer experience that was usually accepted. If it wasn't accepted, you probably didn't do it and moved on. Are you going to add that in to really grow and engage with your customers? Or are you going to contract back to the way it was because we don't have to do that anymore, even though it might have been greater for the customer? And the story that I tell is curbside pickup, which is very prevalent in the States and became more prevalent here in Canada, in particular during the first wave.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried it with a couple of local retailers and it worked great. Tried it again. And, sometimes the phone's ringing a little too much when you're parked in spot number 2 with your order number ready. And then by the third time it was, oh, we're not really doing that anymore. Do you mind coming in? That to me is the tragedy. And it's not really the questions you ask. It's looking at what were those things that customers really attached onto and liked and helped us, and how do we keep it going? And so when you talk about even telemedicine, again, having young kids, I think about the fact that you'd sit in the clinic with a bunch of other sick people. Why would you do that? You can use technology to text me your appointment's in 10 minutes. You can keep people further apart, right? Social distancing, for all of the bad things it brought us, it actually taught us that we could spread things out in a way that's more systematic rather, and actually maybe create a better customer experience if done well. So those things I think are more important than the questions. It's what did we learn and how do we keep them going?
Yeah. I like that. As usual, I am learning an enormous amount chatting with you, and I am deeply grateful. Mitch Joel, everybody, thank you so much for being on Just One Question Plus One, and thank you for your great work and your enthusiasm in keeping going during this weird and wonderful time. Mitch Joel.
I said before, I'll say it again. Anything for you, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you.